All right. So, hello, I'm Jordan Ryan, and welcome to the Mind Body Mushroom, the podcast where we explore the magic of mushrooms, adaptogens, and all the ways you can naturally upgrade your health and well being. Each week, we break down the science behind medicinal mushrooms, ancient healing wisdoms, and share some truly mind blowing stories of transformation. Whether you're looking for a sharper mental clarity, better health, or a deeper connection with yourself, you're exactly where you need to be. Today, we have the incredible honor of speaking with Liz Carmouche, a true pioneer in the world of mixed martial arts. Liz has a remarkable career that spans over a decade, and she's widely recognized as one of the toughest and most accomplished fighters in the sport. With her extensive background in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, kickboxing, and grappling, Liz has earned the moniker Guerrilla for her powerful and relentless fighting style. But Liz's journey down the warrior path started long before the MMA spotlight. She is a proud veteran of the United States Marine Corps, and she has served 3 tours of duty in the Middle East. Her dedication to service and discipline as a Marine has deeply shaped her career in the octagon, making her a role model for resilience, strength, and the veteran community. As one of the first openly gay fighters in the UFC, Liz has also been a trailblazer for the LGBTQ plus representation in sports. She competed at the highest levels, including UFC's first ever women's bout in 2013, facing off against Rhonda Rousey. Now fighting in Bellator, Liz has continued to excel, showcasing her unwavering tenacity and heart with each fight. On top of her achievements in the cage, Liz is passionate about health, fitness, and giving back to the community. She's been a fierce advocate for fitness training and wellness, which aligns perfectly with our mission at Win and See Coffee, where she proudly represents our brand as one of our athletes. Join us as we explore the driving forces behind her relentless pursuit of excellence in the cage and uncover the strategies to maintain peak health and performance in one of the most physically demanding sports. Liz, thank you for being here today and welcome to the Mind Body Mushroom.
Thank you.
Yeah, so let's kind of hop off with a little bit of an introduction. I mentioned how you were one of the first women's bouts. I think was it the first women's bout in
Yeah.
2013 against Ronda Rousey. So what was that like? Obviously you had to have been training in the sport prior to there being a thing. So what was that kind of like? Was there rumors starting? Was this kind of a thing that people were known that, hey, this is going to happen 2013, it's kind of opening? What was that like for you?
Yeah, there were no rumors at all. At first, it happened. We'd been in Strikeforce, and Strikeforce was the largest organization for women in the world, the top that you could get. But most of the women that were involved in it, I would say 99% of the women, there was one woman that wasn't really making money out of it. And that was just Chris Cyborg. The rest of us were kind of hobbyists, right? We were pursuing it full time, but we also had multiple full time jobs to be able to support what we were doing. Like if you were doing MMA, it was simply because of a passion for the sport and wanting it to succeed. It had nothing to do with like, I'm going to make a living doing this as a professional athlete. That just wasn't the reality of it.
Right.
And then Fight Source got bought out by the UFC. And we were in this weird limbo where we had no clue what was going to happen next. Because as far as what we knew, Dana White had said, like, oh, we'll never have women in the UFC. So for our understanding, that meant that we were bought and just waiting to
Oh,
be
wow.
that our biggest opportunity, that organization had disappeared and been bought out by somebody who didn't even want women. And then we got phone calls. And then it finally, Ronda Rousey did a really good job of building a rapport with Dana White. And he started studying tape and he said, like, wow, this woman's able to articulate the points that we're trying to get across. She does really well in front of a camera. She's attractive. She's talented. And she really started to sell that women had a role in MMA. And so because of it, she was able to win Dana White over and get an
Mm.
opportunity for us to actually fight in the UFC. They called around and all their top, like the top 10 that they called, all the women are like, no, I'm not taking that fight. Like, I don't, nobody, Rhonda had never at that point, I don't think had even made it out of a first round ever.
Wow.
So she won usually within like the first 25 seconds of every fight. 35, I think the
Right.
longest at that point that she'd gone was maybe 45 seconds in a
Holy
fight.
moly.
Like collectively, all her fights put together and up until that point hadn't even been a 3 round fight yet.
Oh my goodness, that's insane.
So of course everybody's like, yeah, I don't want to be the next person that happened
Yeah.
in season 4, right? You have this big opportunity, a lot of stress because there's a lot of media behind it. But I was always the person
Right.
where I didn't hesitate. Like if you call me, I'm going to just say yes. I have a fight, cool. And they're like, wait a second, what? Wait, like what's going on? I just automatically hear I have a fight opportunity and say yes. And it was the same thing with this. Is I woke up one morning, I had tons of missed phone calls, text messages, and it was that Dana White was giving me an offer after everybody else had said no, and I didn't turn it down.
That's amazing. That I think that shows a lot about kind of your character and personality, and it extends beyond just MMA and to your willingness to answer your nation's call to serve. Especially in the Marine Corps, something this hyper masculine community, probably feels weird being a girl at first in there. You're like, oh, am I going to be treated differently? Are they going to see me as weak? Are they going to, and these are probably really common thoughts and insecurities that anyone would have, but you're kind of like, say yes and then we'll ask questions later. That really showed through, and it seems like on some level a key aspect of your success is just that willingness to be like, yes to the opportunities that arise. I don't need to know how every road is gonna wind and weave. It's just this is what I've been training for. This is what I'm here for. This is what I want to do. And, the Marine Corps is service to something greater than yourself, but also in MMA, even though it's a very individualized sport, I think, whether you see it this way, you're kind of holding on your shoulder, you're a flag bearer for women in this sport, which is a service to something greater than yourself and your own career as well. So that's really awesome. um no, I kind of wanted to, well, I guess regarding that, there was three things that really drew me to you when I first kind of found out about you as an athlete. One, you were this elite athlete, which was part of what our brand really is trying to represent. There's three things. We want to represent elite performance through holistic means, finding how do you be the best version of yourself and do this for the long term, but do so in a way that is sustainable, where you're not just like frying, your body with, various different types of supplements and whatnot. Also service to country, me being a veteran as well as yourself, that was really important to me just to represent that. And I also really resonated with, your LGBT background, be that, and it's not really something that I stress so much, but it's important for my brand, I believe, to represent tolerance and love for marginalized communities, and to kind of have this balance. Like I view it as like a yin and yang kind of situation. I mean, you're about as hardcore as they get. You're an elite fighter. You're a United States Marine, but you're also a loving partner. You're a woman. You're an LGBT person. I don't know. I don't mean to sound that come off negatively, but my point is, it's sort of this balance. You know what I mean? You're showing that there's a multiple facets, that an MMA fighter isn't just one thing. It's not
Yeah.
just this, and a Marine isn't just one thing, and
Mhm.
a lesbian isn't just one thing. That you can be multifaceted, and that's a super awesome role model, and just message that I want to push with my brand. So that definitely resonated with me, and was one of the things that drew us to you as one of our athletes. So now, can we talk a little bit about your military service? I found some stuff online, so if there's anything in that background that was incorrect, I apologize. But you want to talk a little about your military service and maybe kind of what brought you into the military to begin with?
Yeah, so I grew up in Okinawa, Japan, and so constantly that it's such an oversaturated small island of a military presence, right? Every branch is represented, and there's more bases on that island than I think across the world, like for per square footage, just in Okinawa.
Wow, that's
Um,
crazy.
and the great thing about that is you get to see all different sides of the military. Having grown up around it, I was a civilian living off base. I went to school off base, but I also got to go on base and work on base. So I got to see the civilian side and see when people were out of uniform and in civilian attire, what they
Hmm.
represented, who they were, how they carried themselves, both as a representation of the United States, but also of each of the branches. And then I
Hmm.
got to see them in uniform, and I got to see them PTing all the time, see them at the gym. So I really got to see everybody for what I felt like was all different sides to them, how they carried themselves, what type of person they were in their marriage, what type of parent they were,
Hmm.
how they were to in an environment and a culture they didn't understand and a language they didn't speak, how they carried themselves at the gym if they were trying to push themselves to a new level. For those, I worked in education center. Were they seeking higher education?
Hmm.
And every time the branch that shone through is just being like a great representation of that and striving for excellence. And every branch of that was always the Marine Corps everywhere I went. And I knew that I wanted to join the military. It just felt like there was just a calling there to do that. There was just always something there. And I felt like I could be a difference as I could join the military. And it was kind of trying to remember the movie. It was Michelle Pfeiffer when she'd been a Marine and an English teacher. And I was
Uh,
convinced, um,
yeah, what
I'm
is
forgetting the
that?
movie, but
I
I was
know.
like, okay, I can be like her. I can be just like her. But
Right.
she didn't look as she looked too petite. She didn't look as tough.
Uh-huh.
And I
Right.
was like, I can be a lot like physically
Yeah.
represent that role, but still I loved writing and I felt like I could help reach people and connect them and show
Hmm.
them the balance of being this strong human being when you think of a Marine and being able to show men that women had a right to be in the branches and that you didn't have
Right.
to lower the standard for women, that I was going
Right.
to strive to the male standards and try and meet those, but also that I could articulate and I could find depth within myself in trying to find almost a feminine side within writing. And I wanted to
Yeah.
balance those and then realize that higher education, like college, I don't sit still well. Like I love
Hmm.
learning, but sitting in a classroom wasn't for me. So my
Right.
goal had been to join the Marine Corps, and I wanted to like do a job that was going to be physically demanding and push me, and then have an opportunity to get to go to college at the same time.
Right.
My only deal was like, hey, whatever we do, just nothing with electricity. I have really bad love for electricity.
That's
And my
probably
recruiter said,
wise.
yeah. And my recruiter's like, hey, well, based on your ASVAB score, you can do any job you want. And of course, I listed like recon, MARSOC, like all the cool
Right.
MLS. Like, well, none of those because you're a woman. I was like, all right,
Right.
well, that sucks. And he's like, but I got one for you. It'd be an aviation technician. So
Yeah.
you'll still lift parts. I became an aviation electrician, not technician. I did exactly the job. Like I begged him, please, just nothing electricity. Um, and then when I was in, I found like new goals for every deployment. Like my first deployment, I wanted to lose as much weight as possible and see how lean I could get. Then
Yeah.
my first deployment, I wanted to get as muscular as possible because I'm like, the last thing I want is one of my male counterparts gets injured and
Right.
I can't drag him to safety. I don't
Right.
want to be the weakling within my unit. And then I found out like, well, actually, I'm really strong and I absolutely could carry one of them, wouldn't be an issue. So then I wanted to see like how fast and how lean I could get my second deployment. And then my third deployment, I was like, wow, neither of those options were really that healthy. Like,
Yeah.
cool,
Right.
I could do 25 pull-ups and I could lift like crazy. I learned like I'm really capable of large feats of strength. And then I found out like, oh, I can run and I can be pretty fast and really leaned out, but that didn't look healthy either. So then my
Right.
third two, I tried to find a balance of like what would really push me and find new things. And one of the guys that I worked with, he leaned me towards MMA. He's like, hey, you should really check this out. He's like, I see every deployment that you're trying to strive for excellence and trying to push growth and evolution. He's like, check out MMA. I feel like it's gonna be a really good fit. He's like, anytime that we do any of the physical part of McMep, you
Yeah.
strive and you love that stuff. He's like, this will feed that. And I watched the fight and I was like, no, actually, I don't like this at all. Like somebody got cut on the back of the head and was just gushing blood
Oh
everywhere.
shit.
And then the post-fight interview, he was just talking so much trash. I was like, yeah, I don't think this is cool. I really don't like this. It's gory and there's no sportsmanship. I'm
Right.
100% opposed. But then I caught Chris Cyborg fighting. And I was like, wait a second, I could beat
Hold up.
Chris. Like I could do that. And so I just kind of kept it to
Wow.
myself. I didn't tell anybody, but that was the ultimate goal. So then I got MMA books and I started to do the workouts. I tried to do the technique and I failed at it, but I was trying. I did the diets. And then I just made it my goal that once I got out of the Marine Corps and I came back for my third deployment, that I was going to seek out an MMA gym and just see how far it would take me. But my big takeaway from watching all the interviews and stuff with MMA is that for them to even potentially start their amateur career, they needed to train for at least 2 years. And so I'm like, man, I'm going to get back right before I turn 26. And these people, some of them have been wrestling since they're 4. They have some type of
Right.
combat background. I have nothing.
That's
So I
so
was like,
crazy.
I'll be lucky if I can get it 2 years, even just start an amateur career, but I just want to try it out and just see where it takes me. And then I got there and I just committed. I knew that I had to play catch up for everybody else. So I go in, I ask for a schedule of MMA, and they're like, okay, these are everything you need to, all the classes you need to take to do MMA. They have like 25 classes on the schedule. So I used the GI Bill. I went to school full time. And then the moment I got out of the school, I would train until they closed at night. And I did that every single day until I had my first amateur fight and then my first professional fight.
Holy moly, dude. That's incredible. That's yeah, I would say starting at what, like 24 then? Does that kind of make you or 26-ish, like mid
26, yeah.
26, like mid 20s, dude, like starting anything and then to like become at a high level like that because you're right. I mean, nowadays with, Tiger Wood dads out there, there are
Yeah.
people putting their kids, yeah, they're 4 years old, doing it. But I think sometimes what that drilling that hard at a young age, like you can produce burnout or you can have like, am I really, this is somebody else's goal that's kind of being pushed on me. Whereas in your
Yeah.
case, this was your goal. Like no one was making you do this. You were really self-driven. Now, when you started, training, what was, did you enjoy striking more or grappling? Did you kind of lean towards one thing versus the other?
No, not at all. Because
Yeah.
like I said, I felt like I had to play catch up with everyone else, especially looking at the fight team and seeing where everybody was at in their amateur and professional career. And it was exactly that. Like one of the guys had wrestled since he was 4. Another person had been doing taekwondo since they were 5, and they were
Right.
like a 4th-degree black belt and all
Oh
these
my.
crazy things. And then me coming in and I'm like, hey, I was a Marine. So like when they gave me the schedule and they said like do every single class from the moment you get here in the afternoon until it closes, that's what I did every day. So it wasn't like I ever put more attention towards one thing or the other, is I focused my attention equally so that every single day I did every martial art to try and speed up the process of learning and trying to integrate that muscle memory of everything.
Right, right. That's crazy. So now it mentioned somewhere that you were I believe one of the first, if not the first, openly gay UFC fighters in the UFC. Is that
Yeah.
correct? Out there. So what was that like? Did you feel pressure to kind of keep it hidden, or did you feel like this is a great opportunity for my community to kind of show the world what they can do? What was that like?
Neither, honestly.
Yeah,
I had
yeah.
been hearing Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And when I started
Oh,
training MMA, just having gone through that, like coming out while I was in the Marine Corps, it's Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So I can't be open with my friends. I can't be open with the people I work with or pursue a relationship and constantly always hiding. I'm like, I hate that feeling of looking over my shoulder all the time, wondering if somebody's going to out me and I'm going to get dishonorably discharged for something that it shouldn't really have an impact on my career. So when I got into MMA, I'm like, look, I'm just going to be, I'm not going to throw it in people's faces, but I'm not going to hide this anymore. If somebody
mm-hmm,
asks me, I'm not going to lie about it, but I'm
mm-hmm.
also not going to run around and be like, hey, you're hot. Like,
Right,
so
right.
my big thing for myself is my first, like professional grade mouthpiece. I got a rainbow across it,
Yeah.
the rainbow colors. And that was just my way of discreetly and politely
Cool.
letting people know, like, this is who I am. It's not,
Mm-hmm.
I'll still be a great training partner. I'm still going to work my ass off, but I'm not going to shove it in your face. Like, what are my plans every weekend? Is I'm going to a gay club. Like, so I
Mm-hmm.
tried
Right.
to make it a part of a staple of who I was without doing so obnoxiously. And of course, everybody I knew
Huh.
around me was like, "Yeah, there's no doubts. Like, you're definitely gay. We know." Like, there was no surprise there. They're like, all we care
Right,
about is, are you a good teammate? That's
right,
Are
right,
you a good student? That's the only thing that matters. And then it was just more that now became such like a declaration and a sign of who I was. Like now, if I ever showed up to a fight and I didn't
right,
have a rainbow mouthpiece, people would probably think that it wasn't me at the fight. Right? There's somebody.
right.
Like now, when I go to gyms and I pop in the rainbow mouthpiece, they're like, "Oh my God, that's the mouthpiece! That's so
That's
cool."
sick.
It's just like it's a part of, almost like when you put on your uniform in the military, it's a
Yeah,
part of my MMA uniform.
I
Right? You
love
have
that.
your gloves, you have your sports bra, you have your shorts, but the mouthpiece is always something you have to carry into every fight. Right?
Yeah,
Every fighter has it, male or female, every fighter has a mouthpiece. And for me, I get to have that rainbow symbol. And even at one point with the UFC, they were starting to change like their rules with mouthpieces. and they almost said like, oh, you can't have any designs. Everybody's going to have just a constant. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to sneak around that. Like I'll wear a
Yeah.
polo, but, and they ended up changing it and it didn't matter because somebody had
Uh,
put like some phrase on there that was racist or something along those lines. So they're like, okay,
uh-huh.
we're just going
Uh-huh.
to cut this.
Yeah. Ruining it for everyone.
Yeah. But the UFC, honestly, against everything they said about women being in the UFC, about I think there was some like homophobia statements that were made. They realized the error of their ways as they started to get to know
Right.
people. Hey, we made a mistake and we can own that. You know, women absolutely belong in the UFC. It doesn't matter what your sexual preferences are, it has no reflection of who you are as an athlete.
Right.
So they started doing fundraisers and being big contributors to the LGBT Center in Las Vegas and some other places, and helping raise money and awareness, and let me actually be a part of that. So where I was
Hmm.
anticipating, like of all the
Wow.
organizations, the UFC has been pretty open about where they stand with things, and thinking
Right.
like, oh, this is going to be difficult. It was the complete opposite. They're like, how can we help
Wow.
you find causes for this, and you be a part of this? I was like, wow, this is pretty awesome.
That's really cool. I love that. One thing I want to say about that is it's kind of like it's a piece of your armor. You go into battle with representing this like piece of who you are, and I love that. Do you think that it was top down, like this sort of change of, okay, you told us kind of where where as an organization, but now you guys are kind of going the opposite direction? Do you think that was Dana White kind of, or is this more of just the climate that the audience was in?
Honestly, I don't think it was the audience at all, because I definitely know that at one point, as I was starting to work my way up in the ranks in Strikeforce, and then eventually as I moved into the UFC, my manager at the time had said like, hey, we kind of need you to play at being straight and kind of go back in the closet a little bit. And I was like, yeah,
Wow.
I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Like, there's just sponsorship opportunities where they don't want a lesbian athlete, and you can make better money if you can play straight. And the
Wow.
reality being is a demographic of people that are watching MMA, particularly like Strikeforce and the UFC, are white men between the ages of 18 and 34. And they're all straight. So nobody wants to see a lesbian fighter. So if you want to appeal to these people, you need to play straight.
Hmm.
So it definitely wasn't for the people that were watching.
Right.
It really was the UFC going like, well,
Hmm.
we have a demographic and we have a better understanding. Let's make a difference with people, and let's stray from what the norm is and what's accepted, because this is a demographic of fighters that we have.
Yeah.
Let's bring more acceptance to that world.
Wow, that's super cool. It's not often that you see that type, but a lot. It seems like more times people are kind of ear to the ground, like, oh, let's just give the people what they want, and kind of, it's more rare to pick a lane and be like, this is what we stand for as an organization, and you guys could get along or go elsewhere.
And I think it's too like it's the foresight to understand that, like, if you only have a limited market of men from 18 to 34 and you now have women fighting, you need to broaden that market. Why limit it
Yeah,
to the small
right,
demographic, right?
right.
So maybe it was
It
a
is
whole
good
complete
business for
different, right? And it
sure.
was a very smart move from a business
Right.
standpoint of like, no, let's appeal to a larger market where our demographic won't be just this limited group, but a larger part of the world.
Right. I see that kind of happening as well from the perspective of the military when it comes to recruiting, and that it's very controversial because in that white male 18 to 34 demographic, seeing the military go woke is something that they like, oh, this makes us look weak, like we're so soft, we're this, what happened to the old army ads and the old, like, hoorah, this
Mhm.
type of, Americana, whatever. And so from one perspective, it's kind of like, well, why they're doing, if they're hurting with recruiting, wouldn't you want to appeal to more of those people to recruit? But I think the other side of that argument is America just looks different than 18-year-old white men, or 1834, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the military is changing, the needs of
Mhm.
the military are changing. We're becoming a much more technical force. Like, you need these backgrounds in computers and stuff like this, and so you don't need to just be the football QB back in high school, that archetype of person. And so from their perspective, being more tolerant and inclusive, you know, I think is a calculated decision,
Yeah.
on top of it being the right thing. But it's also like, dude, we just need people. We don't want to put off all these people by making them feel like you don't belong here because you don't fit a certain stereotype, you know? Um, so let's, I kind of want to shift over into wellness and sort of like, your daily wellness practices. Um, as a top level athlete, what does your daily routine look like in terms of exercise and recovery, and how do you maintain peak performance in MMA?
Yeah. So in part, I think that that's for everybody is different. I know like some of the practice that I do seem ridiculous compared to some of the other fighters, and then in other areas, not quite enough. Um, for me, I feel like MMA has to be a lifestyle. It can't be something where you only get into it once you're in fight camp. Like you get fight word and then you
Mm,
jump in. Especially for me, those early years, the opportunities I had was because I trained every single day, regardless if I had a fight on the line or not.
mm,
Because at that time it was really playing catch up, and that then it just became this is just the pattern. This is what we do as the lifestyle, right?
right,
But that allowed me to take last minute phone calls for world titles for these high notice fights that
right,
skyrocketed my career because they knew that I was just the phone call. Like, hey, somebody dropped out of a fight for whatever reason, injury, illness, whatever the case may be. It's a 7 day notice fight. Can you take it? Absolutely. I'll be there. I'll be on wait. I got you. And that helped me, but also it was just because I love this sport, right? It's
mm,
not like I want to train just because I have a fight because I love fighting. The reality is I really don't love fighting that much. I love training. I love the everyday
mm.
grind of getting in the the relationships that you build with people, getting to
Right,
learn from people from the skills that they have or different outlook that they have on something, to be able to share your own knowledge with people to make a difference in other people's lives. Like I love it. I love that I could hit my friend in the face as hard as I want. They hit me in the face, they cut me open, and we're still hugging each other and laughing about it. Like we're
right,
trying to kill each other and we're giggling the whole time and having fun. Like I love that about this sport. And so it keeps
right,
me in here all the time. But of course, the maintenance of putting your body through a very hard training is difficult, right? So I try and make sure that I'm constantly on with my strength and conditioning routine. I feel like ice baths do help my body, and I know there's a lot of research to support that it's not as beneficial for as far as physical recovery, but the mental alone is all I need when it's the first thing I do in the morning, and I absolutely hate being in the cold water. Like
yeah,
I don't like extremes of either temperature. I don't want extreme hot or extreme cold. I like lukewarm, just right in the middle. So for me, if the water is like below 65, I'm like, this is too cold. I can't handle this. So when I get to start off my morning and I know that I just overcome something that I hate, that I don't take any enjoyment in, and I start off the day good, I'm like, cool. I started off with making a choice to overcome something that really sucks,
mm,
and I feel stronger for it. Right.
mm,
And then at the end of the evening, same thing. Then I'm doing sauna before I go to bed at night. And again, it's that extreme hate where like, I don't really want to be that hot. But I know that even if I made mistakes during the day with my training, whatever it is, I have a chance to focus and I have a chance to
mm,
reset everything and go to bed knowing that I overcame one more thing at night. So just those two practices alone help. And then it's also a matter of like, I don't drink anymore. I used to drink. I don't drink. I don't eat junk food. I don't do artificial sugar just because I see the inflammation. I see the difficulties that it puts on your body. And my whole idea is I'm putting my body through so much having been in the Marine Corps and now fighting for 14 years. I'm trying to invest in the bank account that I can and that I have the most control over. I can try and put my money and invest in things, but you're kind of going with however the economy goes and you don't have control of that. You put it in, you're like, cool, it's a good day. And then you lose all of it the next day. But what I can invest in is my body and my future. And the same thing, there are things that are out of my control. I can get injuries, but I can mitigate as much of that as possible in trying to put the healthiest and cleanest things in my body. Like I knew that like when it came to CBD, it made such a huge difference in helping my body. But I was always really bad at trying to remember like how much of the dropper did I do this morning? And I'm doing this again at night. And I'm like, did I do too much, too little? And then like I wake up the next day and I'm like, oh, it was too little. That was the answer. My body hurt. So, so it's like one of the things I connected with your coffee is like I will have my coffee every morning. I don't have to think about it. I got the amount of CBD I needed, and I know I'm going to feel good. And even if my body feels bad, by the time that I drink my coffee, I'm like, man, I feel good again. It reset everything. Everything's back on track. And it just ties in with just, I put into my body and I treat it the way I want it to give back to me. And if I treat it like trash and I put trash into it, it's going to perform that way. And it may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, it may be a week
Mm-hmm.
from now where something happens.
Mm-hmm.
But I just try and treat my body as if it's a Ferrari and or like a Lamborghini, an expensive vehicle that I can't afford to own, right?
Yeah.
I want it to
Right.
last as long as possible because you made a purchase that was way out of your means. And you know that
Right.
if someone scratches it or dings it, you can't possibly afford to fix it. I try and think of my body is the same way. Like there are practices and things that I want to do that's super cool, but do I really want to mess up my Lamborghini?
Right. Right. No French fries are stuck between your seats, is what you're
Exactly.
saying.
Yeah. No French fries. There's it gets them. I don't skip the oil changes. I do
Yeah,
everything I need
right,
to.
right, right. Well, you said a lot of things there that I wanted to hop in on. First of all, about the coffee, that's kind of how I got into coffee specifically as well, because I had kind of gone my whole. I got injured while I was in, and went on this whole path towards like, okay, if I'm gonna have to manage this, how do I do so sustainably? Was looking at plant medicine, looking at these holistic ways, and CBD was working for me, but it was a similar deal where I was like, okay, I still have to remember taking it. It doesn't work if you don't take it. So doing it with coffee just made sense, and so that's awesome that you had a similar experience. One thing I wanted to say that really resonated with me was when you were talking about what you love is training and not the fightings, whatever. It's the training that you love. I think in order to be successful any venture, you really have to fall in love with the process, and you can't be so attached to the outcome of the goal. If the reason that you're starting your company and the reason that you're doing this is because you want to buy that Lambo or that Ferrari, and that is the only like motivation, those external motivators are the first things that fall off, when the going gets tough, and you figure out other ways. You really have to identify your why and fall in love with the process, and just be okay showing up. And then another thing that you kind of made me think about, well, so there's obviously a lot of comparisons and some differences with operating at an elite level as a professional athlete, but also operating at an elite level in the military. And
Mhm.
I would say, the similarities are sort of obvious. It's a lot of training, performance, pushing yourself, pushing through adversity, etc. But I would say the difference is, if you want to be an Olympian, you're kind of trying to catch this like lightning in a bottle, like how you sleep, the meal, the dew point of the day that you ran your race. All these little factors matter, and they that's what makes a difference of that 0.001 second of a tenth of a second that comes off. Whereas in the military, you're almost never going to be operating at your best. You're going to be
Yeah.
sleep deprived. Your back's kind of but messed up. You haven't trapped in 3 days because you've been smashing MREs, out in the field, and you're just expected to go out there and perform. You got it. Hey, we'll get the next fight. That's not an option. It's you're on this op. Like you're out there doing it now. And I see that is a critical difference. And it sounds like something that you took from military training and brought over into that. Like, I'm here today, like 7 days to take a fight. Great. I have a full week to prepare for this. That's whereas to somebody else, they could be like, oh, I really, summer is in a couple months, and that's when I really start the fight training and etc. So, that's an interesting dynamic. Um, let's see. Now, okay, how important is mental wellness in your training and life outside of the octagon? Do you practice meditation, mindfulness, or any other techniques? And you kind of mentioned ice baths, but you want to expand?
Yeah, I honestly feel like it's one of the most underrated parts of MMA. And it's definitely when I look at my fights, the fights that I've lost, it's not because I got owned in the fight and I got knocked out, I got injured. There's been two fights where I was bested because the person that I fought was honestly better than me, but I gave everything I had in that moment. Every other fight that I've lost, was I lost to myself.
Hmm.
Is I went in with doubt. I decided that day that I wasn't going to do my meditation and I wasn't going to go
Hmm.
through and do my mindfulness, do my gratitude, do the mental fortitude. I skipped reading for a week before that and didn't take that time every day.
Wow.
I was doing all those steps and I know better. And I'm like, well, maybe this time will be different. I'm like, well, I lost. That's definitely not different. Like, better.
Right. Right.
And just expecting that you can ride on the coattails of the effort that you put in before and not really thinking that it's a continual thing, just like with the physical, where I have to constantly do it every day and I have to make it a lifestyle. It's the same thing when I have to do all my mindfulness, my meditation, reading. I can't expect that if I put trash in my body, it's not going to be different. The music I put
Right.
in, the books that I read, the television that I watch,
Interesting.
all of that I feel is a huge part of it. I would.
What's up, dude?
Hi. So yeah, I definitely feel like that's a big role. I know like even in my last fight, I lost that and it wasn't because the girl was better than me. I got into my head. I missed weight because of medical stuff that I had going on. And I let that get in my head is like, well, then I deserve to not win because I already
Hmm.
messed up and I made this step. And I just
Hmm.
kept putting doubts in my mind and I went out there and
Wow.
did the performance I need to. And even leading up to it, I'm like, well, I already know that I don't deserve this fight. And I already started to not do the mindful stuff that I did. I didn't do the meditation before the fight. I didn't do my positive words and my words of affirmation before I went into it.
Hmm.
Like I normal my routine for the 9 other fights I won in a row.
Hmm.
I didn't do
Right.
that this fight, and that cost me.
Wow.
Right. And so I
Wow.
definitely feel like that's such a huge part. I've seen athletes go into an MMA fight and you look and there's nothing on paper, any reason whatsoever that they should ever win that fight. On paper, they are
Hmm.
brought up to lose the fight. And the person they are beating far exceeds them. And this is just a filler. It's just one to fill another win on the record. But they go out there and like, I'm going to win this fight. I'm better than this person. They hype themselves up and truly believe. And that
Hmm.
person whacks on them and like, I don't really need to worry about this. And they get
Right.
beat. Right. So you can just see, and I've seen those examples, and I know how important mentalness and that mental fortitude and the mental positivity, doing the meditation, how that plays a role. So it's definitely something that I try and make a part of my lifestyle, from like coming out
Hmm.
when I am home and there's grass and dirt and grounding myself and reading first thing in the morning after I do the ice bath and
Hmm.
taking that time to meditate and put a time aside to read, to work on personal growth, because I
Hmm.
can't just work on physical. Like you were saying, that there has to be yin and yang. I
Yeah.
have to have a balance. I can't just expect the physical to grow if I'm not also growing my mind and trying to evolve in that way too.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And regarding like, you said the music that you listen to, the books that you read, is there maybe like an underlying like theme to all of these things? Like what is good music, good reading, good affirmations versus like bad, like how does that manifest?
Yeah, that too, like an affirmation. I think I had done what is it called? A vision board. And I know the
Yeah.
first time I'd done a vision board, I had no idea what I was doing. I just heard like all these top athletes, and I talked to them, they're like, we have a vision board. And I was like, no, I don't know what a vision board is. And they're like, you have to have a vision board. So I just put like some pictures on a board, and then every day I'd walk past it and I'm like, yeah, it doesn't seem to be working. Like I don't know what they're talking about. And I really didn't understand what a vision board was. And then one of my friends, Prime, he runs UTL and he's also like a mentor for people. And he sat down and he's like, do you have a vision board? I'm like, yeah, man, I had one, but it's useless. It just sat there gathering dust. And he's like, I don't
Interesting.
think you get what a vision board is. So he really sat down and talked with me and explained what a vision board was. That it wasn't just, it was you taking the time as like part of my meditation in the morning. It's sitting down, and when I make a vision board is I'm seeing it come into fruition. And I'm
Mm.
seeing the steps, right? As I'm making these little steps along the way and these markers along the way of things I can succeed in, is small goals to be able to achieve these things. And how will achieving this help me achieve these other things that I have? Right?
Huh.
Is like on my vision board, it was having like, oh man, I'd love to have like a coffee sponsor and a CBD sponsor. Those are two different things are right next to
No
each other,
way. No way.
right?
Wow.
Because that will help my physical fitness and help my body be better and better taken care of in a more holistic way, which will then help my body to stay longer in the sport, give me longevity to continue on. I in turn got my CBD sponsor, right? That was
Yeah,
part of it.
that's so crazy.
I I wanted to get one of those ice baths. I'm like, oh, I like that. And I was able to connect to the company, and I didn't get it for free, but I was able to get a huge discount on it and have a
Right.
good relationship with them doing other things. And there's this, I'm like, man, I really want to have a home, and I wanted to have land and acres, and my wife can have her horses, and she can keep rescuing animals and saving them, and giving back to people and saving animals that would be going to death row. And it was on there for us to be able to rescue and do that. And we did. We wanted to have another child. And so we were able to foster a child for 2 years. It's just things that I put on there. And it's like, well, how can we do this? What steps can we do? So when my meditation, it was sitting there and it was imagining them coming into existence. It was seeing it happen. It wasn't just walking past the board every day and it's just a picture on there, but
Right.
the steps towards it coming into fruition and being in my hands and achieving those things, and how they all tied into each other, that weren't just for the success. Like, my own happiness isn't what's going to make me happy. What's going to make me happy is seeing my family elevated and seeing my friends elevated. So if I
Right.
get these things and I'm better for myself, will this also help the community around me? And for me, that was something that was important, was to achieve more for not just myself, but for the other people around me, because that's what ultimately brings me happiness. Is like, cool, I could win a belt, but if that belt didn't help my family, if it didn't make them proud, if they
Right.
didn't achieve something with it, they didn't feel like it was their accomplishment too, then it's just like every other belt you put on your waist. It doesn't mean anything. It's just another belt.
Right.
But
Right.
if it's something I achieved with their help, and they feel like it was that belt is something that they earned too. Like when I got that belt, my son and my wife both took turns sleeping with it.
Oh, that's so great.
It wasn't just my accomplishment. My son's like, this is my belt too. Like, I helped you do that
Right.
because I do
Right.
cardio. He's like, well, I'll keep you company. It's like, come on, dude. And so for like my 45 minutes, hour at night, he'd talk with me and like hang out and stuff. Right. So he
Right.
felt like he had those accomplishments. And for my wife, she's sacrificing taking care of the farm. So it wasn't just that belt was hers too. She helped sacrifice to take care of it. And in that vision board and doing the mental steps, it was me picturing us bringing this belt home and them feeling like it was their belt and they earned it too. And so for
That's so
me,
awesome.
the visions and doing a vision board, doing the mental, it's positive. It's not seeing the doubts along the way, understanding that they'll be there, but not casting them, right? If you focus too much on doubts, you're just going off that path towards trying to achieve it. But when you think
Right.
like, yeah, I'm going to trip along the way, I'm going to fall on the path, but just don't fall off the path to achieve your goals, right? I
Yeah.
know it's going to be there, but that happens and it just brushes off me. It hits my shoulder and it keeps going. Like, I see those difficulties and the hardships coming,
Hmm.
let them go. So like I can
Right.
watch a TV show, but if in the TV show everybody's always losing and they're down on themselves and they're putting people down in the TV shows and that's all they do, then that
Yeah.
still gets rooted in your mind. And then you start being like, oh, that's okay to do to yourself and the people around you, instead of realizing that all of that shapes you. Right. Like you can have a
Interesting.
little bit of that, but you should have, it's like just with stuff like with food, like, yeah, I can have junk
Yeah.
food every now and then, but that shouldn't be my main source. That same thing,
Right.
like if all I listen to is music that's degrading for myself and
Yeah.
for the people around me, eventually, if that's all I consume, that's what's in the back of my mind playing too.
Right. Right. So yeah, your media diet needs to be, top tier the same way that your physical diet needs to
Yes.
be, and that you actually do kind of take on that psychic baggage and those
Mhm.
negative thoughts. A couple of things you made me think of was one, I think it's really cool to have these very like single focused goals in some ways, like getting a championship belt. That is such a all in type of goal, that I think there is sort of a consensus belief or feeling that if you really want to achieve that, it takes sacrifice. I mean, that's true. It does take sacrifice, but the sacrifice doesn't have to come at the expense of your family, of the
Yeah.
relationships with your kids. So like, and not only does it not have to come at the expense, but if your family life is falling apart, if these other aspects of your existence are, if you're neglecting them because you're so focused on this one thing, my personal belief is that it actually detracts from your ability to achieve that thing, because you do need a sense of harmony and balance, in order
Mhm.
to move in that direction. um,
Yep.
and then a question. So you have me really interested on this vision board thing, because that's super cool. I've definitely heard of vision boards. I'm familiar with them, um, you know, at a base level. But do you think maybe you could like if you were to give a 5 minute like general explainer of maybe here's the steps, is it make a list of what it is that you want to, or you know what I'm saying? Like what's sort of the order of operations into making one for the audience? Because that's super useful.
On the simplest way to do it is set a 1 week, a 1 month, a 3 month, 6 month, 9 month, and 1 year goal of things that you're looking to achieve within there. And it could be like this week, I'm just looking to go to the gym 3 days this week, right? That is too vague. Like and plenty of people can go to the parking lot at the gym and go to the gym, right?
Yeah, right.
If you're like, I'm looking to push as hard as I can in weights and to do cardio for 30 minutes I've never done that before. That's a 1 week goal, right? That's achievable. And then 1 month, you're like, I want to see an increase by me doing my cardio of being able to run a mile and shave 30 seconds off, or in setting those goals. And then 6 months. So it should be for your personal life and goals that you're trying to achieve. Like for me, it was to be a better mother that my son could be proud of and that he wanted around. Like you can still be at least in my own life, you can be a person of pride where your family can be like, man, I'm really proud of her, but she's not really present as a wife or as a mom. Right. And so for me, it was like making sure that I'm that mom that like I FaceTime for all the soccer games. And even if it's like I'm in the middle of a training and I'm doing cardio, it's on the cardio machine. I'm like, yeah, go bud. When it's I'm going to be a present parent in that moment where when I'm there, like my long-term goal throughout the year is when I'm with my family, I'm with my family. I'm not on my phone. I'm not just watching TV or being distracted. But when I go to a soccer game, my phone's away and I'm watching my son's soccer game. When I sit down and we go to the park and we play, I'm there playing with my son. I'm not just hanging out, reading a book or doing something, because I'm present every moment with them because I don't know when I'll have the next one. So like I set a goal for myself to every week put aside. My son and I, for my 1 month goal, is every month he and I go on our own little like date night. And so he and I have a day where we get to go, we pick activities and he and I go have time with just the two of us. And then like my 1 week goal for that personal life was that every day I was going to set aside time every night where he and I have 5 minutes of just connecting with me and him, reading or playing Legos, doing something that connects. For my wife, it was setting time where we had 5 minutes every night where we can deconstruct our day and talk about what was going on so I could be a present wife. And so I set those goals for my personal life where I'm going to be present those moments and set aside time where I connect with them and get to hear and be there for them. And then like my professional life, it was like, okay, for this week, I'm going to add a training session that I hadn't done that makes me uncomfortable. And so I know that it was underwater training. I'm horrible in the water, so I'm going to make myself uncomfortable. I have to go every week to that. And then 1 month goal is I'm going to participate in adding it 2 weeks. And I set goals so that I could see something. So it's supposed to be something you set: financial goals, personal, and professional goals. And those are three that you.
Now, is it kind of in like a timeline in that case, like how it visually
So
is
kind of
on
like
your board?
so like you set your financial and you have like a 1 week goal in which you'd like to
Yeah.
achieve. Like maybe it's just you go to Starbucks one less time that week, right? Like
Right.
once a week,
Right.
I'm going to skip out. That's just one way of achieving it. And then
Yeah.
what's your one goal? By 1 month, I want to only go to Starbucks instead of pulling it once a week. I only go once a week, and then
Yeah.
setting more goals like that, and then taking that money and putting it aside. Right. So
Right.
then you have a goal because you did the math and you found out, well, that would allow me to
Yeah.
do a whole payment on my vehicle that for that month it's paid off by
Boom,
just
and then picture of your car. Then that is that now how do you now that's kind of that leads into this part of the question is how do you visually represent those goals in the form of like a picture or something that makes sense to you for your vision board?
Yeah, so for me, it was like I had a picture for me, like with my son, where we had gone out and we had done an activity, right? And so it was me, and it was such a memorable moment for both of us, where we had both had so much fun that he talks about always wanting to do that all the time. And so like that was such a connection for him. And like you can see this picture and we both remember that moment so distinctly. So for me, I put that on the board as like a reminder, it's connected to have
That
a getaway. Like
right.
this year, I got to go and I took him to a
Mm,
seminar. And so we had 4 days of driving and just connecting with each other that I haven't had in 9 months. Right. So that was for us to be able to achieve that. And then with my wife, the same thing, like a picture of us where we've gone to Vegas and being able to have those 4 days and have that memory this is our goal, is to make more memories like this. And so
mm,
then every day I can think when I meditate is like, okay, today I'm going to be present. I'm going to tell them 15 times today that I love them. I'm going to hug them 15 times each. Tonight, I will give them 5 minutes. And then I'm working towards this goal. And in my mind, I'm seeing, okay, that's for today. And then I see it playing out for a week of me doing this, and then another week and a month, and seeing how this goal connects to the next one I'm trying to achieve. And
Right.
how I'm setting them in connection with each other, that by following that 1 week goal and achieving it, my 2 week goal is that much closer, my 1 month goal,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth.
Wow, that's really, really cool. And whenever you fall short of your goal, hey, I said I'm gonna do an ice bath every morning, and I overslept. Like how do you get yourself back on track, or kind of roll with those punches, like you said, kind of the obstacles that may pop up along the way.
Yeah, and that's definitely like ice bath is perfect examples. I put on there
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm gonna do 25 days this month. My goal is to do the ice bath, right? So again, let's say we're in a
Hmm.
month, we have 31 days. I gave myself 6 days of mistake,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So if I
Right.
do extra,
That's
I'm
smart.
like, I just can't mess up and not do 25. I can do
Right.
extra, and that's awesome. Maybe I got 30 this month, but I
Right.
can't do less than 25. And
Right.
so there have been times where like I found every excuse and I was right at that mark where I'm like, I'm at 24 and we're on the 30th day and I messed up. I'm like,
Oh shit.
and then like I just keep putting it off and I get home. And the thing too is like some of those goals is I have people of accountability for me, that
Mm,
I tell them things so they can hold me accountable too. So my wife and
right.
my son both know, and he'll look every morning before he like goes to school and he's like, "Hey, I didn't see you do the ice bath. Did you do it when you got back?" And I'm like, "Nah."
Mhm.
You
Uh-huh.
know, the same thing where my wife's like, "Hey, I'm just gonna lock the door. You have to stay outside and do the ice
Right.
bath. It takes 3 hours to
That's
figure it
cruel.
out."
Yeah, it's
But
true.
the accountability, because there's nothing worse. It's
Accountability.
really easy to tell yourself lies and excuses. It's
Mhm.
really hard when you have people that you love and care about to lie to them or make an
Right.
excuse that you're going to feel like is worth it. Like you don't want that judgment of telling somebody, especially if you have somebody that's counting on you, like they have their own goals and they're looking to
Right.
you, and you're
Yeah.
each holding each other accountable, and you're like, oh, well, I thought it was okay today. For all you know,
Yeah.
like they're really struggling, and they
Right.
were on that 30th day and they hit 24, and this is about to be them not making their goal at all, and then
Right.
they you make excuses and they're like, well, I mean, if they're saying it's okay, then it must be okay for me. So I
Yeah.
always look at it as though there's somebody else that's relying on me
Right.
to be that guiding light, to show them that I'm going to keep true to my word and be accountable for it.
Mm,
And they're looking out for me too. So I kind of always find people to hold me accountable and
mm,
know those goals. Some goals I just keep to myself because I just want to show them that I achieved this.
mhm.
Like I didn't tell my wife about my personal goals or my son about it. I just
Right.
showed them in presence of who I was. But the ice bath goal they know about, because they know how much I'm a big baby and I need that extra
Yeah,
help.
you need
That
it. Right.
person,
Right.
you know, and
Right.
I know they're going to keep me accountable. So it's keeping people accountable for me definitely helps to
That's
be able to
awesome.
achieve it. And then putting that number out there, I'm like, okay, guys, I have to do this 25. And like I have a calendar and this marks this number. And they're real quick to help back me up on those.
Sure, sure. Yeah, it sounds like, social safety net, or like, your safety net, your support group of people, that group accountability is part of it, and then setting goals that are, smart goals, they're achievable, they're um, recognizing that we all fall short sometimes, and so have a little bit of grace, but you really set that line. Where is my line? Where's my tolerance level of where I this is unacceptable to
Yep.
me based on where I want to go? And yeah, that all makes a lot of sense. Definitely something I want to do after this is make a vision board like that. It's really cool. Now let's see. All right, well, we'll kind of briefly, do you want to just talk about maybe like some diet and nutrition? I'm sure it's pretty straightforward stuff, but is there anything kind of novel, or interesting there you want to talk about?
No, I would say I think that there's so much information out there right now. Like most people know, we can all agree artificial sugar isn't good for
Right,
us, right? So that's pretty
right.
easy. I think a lot of people are kind of on the fence on like seed oils and things of that nature. My
Mm-hmm.
biggest thing is I give myself the idea, just like with everything, give myself room for failure, right? But I
Yeah.
try and make sure that most of what I ingest isn't manufactured. So almost everything I eat is grown, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's grass fed meat. It's um, we've grown our vegetables, something along
Cool.
those lines. Very, very little of it is any processed foods. And I think that that
Hmm.
is a really important part just because one, you don't know what's actually on the labels in there, right? And what's added in. And then too often we don't know the long-term effects of what these new things that are that we're introducing with these processing. So I'd rather not
Right.
take the risk. So my big thing is just eating as clean as possible to stay as healthy as
Right.
possible.
Yeah, I think that's great too because it kind of, diets can get so like atomized and we're the ketogenic diet, Mediterranean diet, whatever it is, and vegan. It might work for somebody, it may not work for somebody else. Like people are individualized. I think keeping broad strokes like this, like in almost no uncertain terms, is a processed food going to be better for you than a
Yeah.
whole food,
Yep.
so these are kind of like very easy to stick to without having to become a nutritionist. Oh, eggs are good for you. Oh, eggs are bad for you.
Yeah.
These the fad diets that yo-yo back and forth. So
Hmm.
yeah, that all makes a ton of sense. Now, right now, I mean, like, you've been doing this for 14 years, which is crazy. Like just the longevity of doing anything that at a high level for that long is, there's an element of longevity, obviously, that comes into that. But for me, so when I was in training in the military, it was very much this like balls to the wall, we'll limp about it later. Like today is, we have these very specific goals, and you got to conquer your inner bitch to get there. And let's not listen to our body all the time. Let's not do these things, right? As I've gotten older, it was a hard kind of like ego shift for me because it's like lifting less at the gym, not hitting the same times that you want to do. It just feels like I'm weaker, I'm less than, and you're kind of reinforcing this. An unlock for me was sort of transitioning that my goals have just changed. Now I'm not trying to operate in special forces at a super high level. I want to be 70 and surfing. I want to be able to lift up my grandkids and do these things. So now my goals have just changed. And now I'm not comparing myself to that old version of me and how much less I'm deadlifting. I'm thinking how much closer I'm getting to being 70 and surfing. So how has your mindset um, shifted, or what looking at a potential post-fight career as you get older, how is that reflected in your health and wellness routines?
Yeah, it's definitely changed substantially. I mean, when I first started training, I was fresh out of the Marine Corps. And
Yeah.
I was like a Marine, as they've told, like, hey, you're gonna do 8 hours of training nonstop every day. That's what you're gonna do. Is to go, okay, then that's what I'm gonna
Oh,
do, right?
all right.
So they told me like, hey, we have 25 classes. You have to do 6 of these to be MMA. And I'm like, oh, they didn't mean 6 hours back to back, but I didn't know. There was an explanation. All I heard was do these 6, and I went,
Oh my God,
okay.
such a Marine, Liz.
So I'd get out of college and just do the 6 hours straight nonstop every single day. And then eventually, like I started realizing, like, well, one, I'm accruing injuries. Is
Hmm.
I'm constantly fighting through. I'll sleep when I'm dead, and I'll worry
Hmm.
about that injury later. My knots are what are holding me together. I don't need massages. And realize just that was right.
Right.
But nobody was there to educate me and tell me. It was me starting to do research and be like, man, I do love this sport,
Mm.
and I'm really worried that I won't be able to continue this sport because
Uh-huh.
my body can give out. And as I started to like look up stuff, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm doing this the hard-headed jarhead way. This is really stupid.
Yeah.
Of course, like all this is
Right.
happening. So then I definitely had a huge shift in trying to once I got out of the Marine Corps, I was like, I'm not doing like the Marines, the military in general is really big on, oh, okay, well, you're hurt, take some Motrin.
Yeah,
Take some
yeah. Change socks.
yeah,
Change
yeah.
your socks. Take Motrin.
Just cover it up. Your back's hurting, Flexerol. Just
Right.
ignore it and find a way to keep going. And I'm like, no,
Right.
there's a better way to do this. Our bodies have indicators and they tell us these things for a reason. Like when your car vehicle
Right.
lights come on and they're telling you like, hey, you have a flat tire, it doesn't mean just keep driving. Change
Yeah.
the front.
Right.
There's a way to treat this before it comes something worse. And
Right.
so I'm like, really don't, like when I was in the Marine Corps, if they injected me something and just say, here, you're going to take this shot, you're going to take all this stuff if you want to deploy and just say yes. And I have no idea what they put in my body. I
Mm-hmm.
can't, I'm like, I have control over it and I know what I put in.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't I start being more mindful of what that is and actually reading labels and
Yeah.
looking at my recovery routine and realize that it was non-existent. My
Mm.
recovery routine was go to work and work a 12-hour shift and compromise sleep
Ooh.
and proper appetite and not doing any of the recovery stuff to be able to keep training. And
Right.
there's like, well, something has to give. And so then I started very quickly shifting that and realizing my body started feeling better and I was actually
Mm.
performing better and my mental headspace was better by
Mm.
taking care of all these things. But unfortunately,
Mm.
it took a lot of injuries to get to that point. And my big shift now is I still have that conflict in my head. And it's like, okay, well,
Yeah.
cool. We're fighting an
Right.
injury that we're doing injury prevention right now. And we're treating something that's bothering you and not something that's injured that requires surgery. So
Hmm.
let's keep it in that cautionary stage before it's in the problem stage
Right.
and learning how to do that. But there's still that part of my brain that goes like, you could just
You got to
push through.
push. Yeah. Right. Right. It's such a fine line sometimes, you know?
You fought with broken bones and you fought with torn ligaments. Like you can do this. Like don't be a
Right.
pussy. It's like you can do this. And me
Right.
having to be like that marine side of my head that's like
Uh,
just push through. Duct tape will fix everything. You'll be fine. Just do
exactly.
some Motrin. And I definitely had to like push that side and be like, no, you need to be quiet. You are the demon on my shoulder. Get
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
too.
Right.
Right. But
Huh.
it's definitely a huge struggle and it's constantly like a part of that checking on myself mentally, like doing my mental fortitude and doing all my meditation is a check in with my own body too and seeing where I'm at. Like, what do I have to put out for the day? Do I have 100% effort? Do I have 90%, 80%? Where am I? And
Mm.
if all I have today is 70% in the tank, then that's the maximum you have, then give 70% today. But
Hmm.
understanding where my limits are and not trying to
Hmm.
still give 100% when I don't have 100 and breaking myself to make that happen. So it's
Very
checking in
smart.
with myself and really seeing like, okay, I'm like, man, today I have 10%. I just got to
Hmm.
show up and go through the motions and that'll be good enough and just be cautious with everything and preserve my body and be okay with that. And that's the
Right.
hardest part is telling myself that that's okay. Because again, like I'm trying to reach certain goals. And the only way to do that is to make those goals. If I destroy my
Hmm.
body here and I never even make it to the first check mark, then what was it worth? Right? Cool.
Yeah.
You put, and I have to, and it's
Yeah.
kind of like prioritizing that. So I have a much bigger push on recovery. And some days
Hmm.
that means like, I just need to go 5% today. And
Yeah.
instead of giving 5 hours, I'm going to give 1 hour because that's all I have. And that's okay. And being okay with that and telling myself that's okay. And that's the hardest part is reminding me that
Dude.
it's okay.
No, totally. Yeah, I mean that extends beyond just, like physical training. I think for you it's like physical training, but it's also your job. It's also, who you are as a person. So, it's that lived life philosophy. But for other people, that maybe have fitness is an aspect of their life, but maybe like for me at this point, win and see is what I do. My running my company, these are where my goals are. Fitness is super important, so is time with my family. So are all these things. But you know, being okay with recognizing like, hey, this is a long-term goal. I'm gonna be running this company for 20 years, maybe I could sell it before that, that'd be great. But I'm not going to accomplish everything this week. So
Yeah.
just burning the candle at both ends and always pushing through and being like, no, like, you got to show up and work harder, work later, work do. Sometimes you need to do that, but sometimes I think you have to, recognize that you only got 70% in the tank and that it's okay to just show up sometimes and just go through the motions, that you're going to have good days and bad days. And the real enemy is fighting like burnout and these other having your life fall apart because you're hyper fixated on one thing, and just not listening to the engine lights that are coming on. um
Yeah.
well, let's see. All right, we're kind of wrapping up here, but we talked about so much awesome stuff. Let's see. Oh yeah, okay. Regarding that, you probably won't fight professionally forever.
Yeah.
No, maybe. Um, so what does that next chapter look like for you in terms of, once you do hang up the gloves, how is wellness and fitness going to be an aspect of your life then?
Yeah, so like I said, it's a lifestyle for me. I think even when I'm not in the cage, and maybe I'll never have a fight team that I run, I think as a woman, it's really difficult, no matter your accolades, to be the head of an MMA program, just because men respond so much better to men. That's just the reality, right? So I don't know if I'll ever be in the position. I would love to, because I love helping people and I love teaching, but I don't necessarily think that that's in my future, as awesome as that would be. Like, that would be great. Like the idea of fighting Chris Cyborg, like what got me into it, right? Would be great. But I love training. And like I said, where my camaraderie comes in, where the challenges come in and the fun is still going to the gym. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
I'm in good physical conditions. Like when my son needed help with his soccer practice and I'm running with him for an hour. If you had asked me to do that 2 years ago, that wasn't going to happen. Like my
Mm,
body's hurting too much. I absolutely hated running, but me shifting my mindset and my focus on the recovery and understanding my body better, I'm like, yeah, I can jump in with you guys for an hour. I got you. I still got my cleats. They never went away.
right.
It's like fitness,
Mm,
physical fitness is a part of our lifestyle and importance we place
yeah.
on it. So, like
Yeah.
setting that time in the morning where like, man, I really don't want to do it. I'm like, but it has to be done. And I said it as a requirement, just like I have to have coffee in the morning, I have to have breakfast in the
Yeah.
morning. That physical fitness, there is a goal of every day that has something that has to be achieved, right? And it may be the bare minimum, but it's always setting that goal and it's always a part of who I am. And this is still a community I love being a part of. So I think that even after my MMA career is over, I don't see myself just walking away from it. I still see
Mm-hmm.
being involved in some way, whether it's volunteering to help out programs or just being in the environment where I'm training with everybody. It's still something that I love and something I'm passionate about that I'll never let go of. And then
Mm-hmm.
taking care of my body and trying to put that holistic approach and trying to preserve my body as much as possible, that goes outside of fighting. Like to me, there's plenty of fighters that don't do that and they still perform great for now, right?
Yeah.
But
Right.
my idea of trying to recover my body and make sure it's healthy is so that I can be 40 and keeping up with the
Yeah.
20-year-old coach, right? And
Yeah.
outrunning him, right? That's
Right.
my goal, to be on the field with my son. And so I'm beating him as long as I can, like we're doing sprints. And so for me,
Totally.
that physical fitness will be so that I can be the athlete mom that my son can rely on. And if he's stuck in a tree because he climbed up, I have the strength to be able to get
Yeah.
him down and the ability.
Right.
I want to
Right.
be able, if he wants to go run and play and nobody else can play with him, I can do that with him. Like I want to be that parent. So physical fitness will always be a part of my life.
That's awesome. I think that's, maybe a bit of like a paradigm shift in the way that top athletes are viewing fitness these days. It's kind of subtle, but I definitely think that even like 10 years ago, it was much more of this like, you got to cut everything away and pour it all in. And, like that's the cost of what it takes to be the best at something, and now you're seeing more and more people, not just professional athletes, but also, elite military units and stuff like this, where they're really trying to focus on this longevity piece that, 40 is the new 20 and everyone's living forever. So, we want to live with some sort of, youth and longevity, not just being alive, right? You want health, not just like extension of life. So yeah, that I think that's all great. So let's see. Before we wrap up, I want to take a moment to highlight Win and See Coffee. If you're looking for a way to fuel your body and mind with premium ingredients, Win and See Coffee has you covered. Our functional latte powders are crafted with organic ingredients and infused with powerful adaptogenic mushrooms to support your energy, focus, and overall wellness. Whether it's our Loca Mocha, Magic Matcha, or Moonlight Latte, each product is designed to deliver clean, sustained energy without the crash. Plus, every purchase supports a veteran-owned business and eco-conscious initiatives like our partnership with 4Ocean. You heard Liz talk about our CBD infused whole coffee. We also now offer mushroom infused whole bean coffee. So mushroom coffee for coffee lover, CBD if you're really trying to get that anti-inflammation, help with that midday crash. So yeah, that's the company. But that was an incredible conversation with Liz. It's always inspiring to hear how elite athletes prioritize wellness, not just for peak performance, but for long term health and mental well being. And I hope you all took as much from that conversation as I did. Now, Liz, before we sign off, can you tell the audience how they can support you, where they can follow your journey, and if there are any upcoming events or projects that they should keep an eye on?
Yeah, so I can be found on social media. I think the biggest platform right now has just been Instagram at I am Gorilla. Through there, you can find a link to my Millions page where you can buy merchandise that I'm trying to come out with new logos for, or personalized videos, whether it's like jokes you can send to family and friends, burning them about things, or just a personalized like motivational something for yourself. I do a lot of those. And I
Hmm.
say right now, be on the lookout. My wife and I have been trying to do a nonprofit for raising and breeding and training service dogs for injured veterans. And ultimately, we
Sweet.
want to be able to help out like autistic children as well, but we're trying to figure out how to get into that world. The other thing we're doing is we're rescuing animals, whether it's from high kill shelters, both dogs as well as horses.
You're my hero, Liz. You're like such an amazing person. I really mean that. You really inspire me. Those are so many of those goals are things I would, when I grow up, and just like you, I want to be adopting and saving animals. And last kind of question, you mentioned earlier that you were big into writing. Writing was like a passion of yours. Do you do anything with writing still, or do you see that in your future?
Yeah, it's definitely something where just on this road trip with my son, we stopped at Edgar Allan Poe Museum. And I'd forgot how he was like such a cool poet that I'd looked to, and I really liked his short stories and how his stories inspired so many of like the horror film characters we know today and authors as well. And I totally forgotten about that as I'm like telling my son
Huh.
about this. And so like, yeah, I think this is a little bit too mature for your age group. Like I'm just as we're like reading these poems. But one of them you do a scavenger hunt, and one of the stops is you like write your own poem. And that was
Hmm.
the first time in years that I had written anything like that. And my son was like, "Did you just do that?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like,
Wow.
"Oh, that was so cool." I'm like, I forgot how much I enjoy this, and like trying to explain to him. He's like, "I don't really think I like poetry. I don't want to write it." And so I wrote mine first. I'm like, poetry is so cool because everybody has their own experiences and everybody has their own feelings, and they can read a poem and have two completely different outlooks on what that means to them, both from like an emotional connection they had with it, from their past experiences. I'm like, and I love that about poetry. It's open to interpretation. That's what's so cool about it. And
Hmm.
I like was trying to explain that. And he's like, okay, I'll write a poem. Then like, that's super cool. I
Yeah.
love that. He was so opposed. Like, I'm not doing it. Like, not I don't like poetry. And then when I kind of explained to him like how cool it is because of that, he's like, all right, cool. I'm like, man, I forgot that that's what always poetry was, because I could be talking with someone about a poem, and we would just have so many different outlooks on one poem. And then I could even see
Hmm.
somebody's different input and like, oh, it can mean this or this. And I
Hmm.
just love that, where I'm like, man, I need to get back to that. So I've definitely made it like a new goal, and I'll have to like put it on the vision board, is to start writing again and get back into that.
That's awesome. Well, you heard it from the warrior poet herself. Liz, thank you so much for coming on the Mind Body Mushroom, and yeah, keep crushing it out there. I'm so stoked that you're on the team.
Thank you so much.
Don't go anywhere. I'm just gonna pause recording. Okay, cool. I think we're good.